Hey gamers, Foxfires here, bringing you an update on ArcheAge. Patch 4.5 has been released in Korea, and with it, big changes for gear are coming to the US and EU when it releases here, probably mid to late summer. For this video, I used Omnom's translation of the KR patch notes, and for this, I pulled all the various changes related to gear to piece together a clearer picture of how the various bits synergize. So one of the biggest struggles new and returning ArcheAge players face is gear disparity. If you haven't seen how and why the gear gap is such a critical problem in this game, check out my previous video linked here. My videos on the issue caught the attention of Tryon, and I had the opportunity to chat with him about it several months ago. And so one of the reasons for the gear gap is the substantial cost of making or buying gear. Previous patches made this worse by increasing the amount of mats needed to get to the next tier of gear, as well as changes that were made to the trade system so that charcoal, one of the key mats for gear, was more difficult and time-consuming to obtain. Separate from the gear tier system, many of you probably know how the regrading system also made gearing up an expensive and risky venture. For those of you who are new to the game, regrading increases the quality/grade of the gear, so the gear stays the same tier, but its stats improve with each grade level. The higher the grade, the more expensive regrading costs are to further increase the quality, and the lower percent chance of success. Trying to regrade to epic or higher grade came with a very low percent chance of success, and a high chance to downgrade or even destroy the gear. A lot of players have been really upset about gear destruction. And that brings us to what I think is the most critical change to gear for ArcheAge 4.5, the damaged item system. Illustrious, Magnificent, Epherium, Delphinid, and Ionide gear will no longer have a chance to be destroyed upon regrading past Celestial. That's right, no more destroyed gear. Instead, it has a chance of being damaged. Damaged means the gear can no longer be regraded or upgraded, but the stats on the damaged gear are the same as those on undamaged gear. This could be huge for new and returning players to be able to gear up. It's no secret that ArcheAge has a lot of hardcore players who are constantly regrading gear despite the risks, and when the gear is destroyed, they start again. Now those players will be able to sell damaged gear from those attempts to new and returning players, or even players wanting to feed their Aranor pieces. So this is great for regrading players too, because they can try for those higher grades and still be able to recoup some of the losses with the item becoming damaged instead of destroyed. There's also improved chances of success on regrading, with some of the chances being doubled. If a new chart Omnom posted holds for our live release in US and EU, you can see here from the chart that the chance of destruction is eliminated and only Celestial has a chance of downgrade. And Celestial still has a decent 60% chance to successfully regrade. If you combine the improved regrade success chance with the inability to downgrade or destroy, more players than ever will be regrading gear. So that's a fair chance for a lot of pieces to become damaged. A flood of damaged gear could potentially hit the market. And this is great news for new and returning players to be able to pick up a decent set of damaged gear at potentially a much more affordable price. Again, it's great for the in-game players and Aranor gear too, because the damaged gear can still be used to feed the Aranor pieces. What's more is that XL has stated that with patch 4.5, the amount of mats needed to make crafted equipment at Delphinid and below will be decreased. Materials for Ionid and Aranor gear remain relatively unchanged to preserve the overall value of the higher level gear. The reduction in mats is great not only for new and returning players to directly gear up more easily, but again feeds into that cycle that helps veteran players churn out and regrade more items to feed Aranor gear, as well as provide a supply of damaged gear. Due to the material amounts being lowered for Delphinid gear and below, it is important to note here that the amount of experience when being synthesized to Aranor items has also been decreased. And again, this has been done to preserve the value of Aranor items. Changes are also being made to output grades when crafting, so that the output gear is a certain grade. For example, a piece of Epherium tier gear must be at least unique grade in order to upgrade to the next tier. When upgraded, the resulting Delphinid will now be of arcane quality, and Ionid will be of heroic quality. To to further bolster this gearing, regrading, feeding process along, the gear tiers below Illustrious are being removed. And Aurora gear dropped by Aurora mobs is being replaced by Illustrious tier drops. This influx of Illustrious tier gear helps jumpstart the crafting process. Another big perk is the new crafting commission system. Crafting higher tiers of several items requires the player to have a higher and higher crafting proficiency. The more expensive the items mats, the more risky for players to trade those items over to a player with high enough proficiency to craft it for them. In 4.5, commission bulletin boards will be added to each regional community center. With the crafting commission system, players can create commission requests for the items they want crafted, risk-free from the crafting folio. The system handles the mats needed to make the item, and the request is posted to the bulletin board. Crafters can then interface with it to fulfill the request. It's great not just for players lacking proficiency to craft the item, it's also great for crafters, because they receive payouts for fulfilling their requests. So, to go hand in hand with players gearing up, they can get that gear crafted for them without risk. When you put all of these various bits together, you can see how well they synergize. 1. The damaged item system, instead of destruction or downgrade. 2. The improved regrading chances. 3. The decreased mat requirements. 4. The output crafting grade. 5. The sub-illustrious tiers removed. 6. Aurora mobs dropping illustrious tier items. And 7. The crafting commission system. Overall, patch 4.5 looks like it might finally implement changes to the gearing and regrade system to allow new and returning players to gear up. At least on the gear side of things. The challenges introduced in previous patches for lesser geared players to make gold in order to get this gear is a whole other issue. For example, previous patches changed the trading system, making a lot of overland trade routes no longer feasible. And routes crossing the ocean are impossible on servers where guilds keep the port cities locked down. If you want to see how 4.5 will impact the trade system, check out my next video, which I'll link here when it's posted. Bear in mind, none of this is guaranteed for US and EU, and we won't get the patch for several more months. But that does give us some time to try to raise remaining issues with Tryon and XL, so let me know if there are additional changes or tweaks that you think should be made. And while the gear and regrading changes look good on paper, do you think it's going to be enough to allow returning players to gear up to a competitive level? Lastly, as part of the Tryon Creators program, I have some Skywhisper gliders to give away. So make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment down below with your thoughts and the hashtag #GlideMeToGear. That's #GlideMeToGear. As always, thanks for watching, gamers. I'm Foxfires, and this has been an update on ArcheAge.